What if I told you that £2 pint in your local spoons exists because Tim Martin flipped the entire UK brewing industry on its head, forcing breweries to beg him for shelf space? And that's just one of the hidden tricks behind his multi-billion-pound empire. Here's the trick nobody noticed. Wetherspoon doesn't buy beer through the traditional tied house system. They bypass every middleman and go straight to the breweries. But here's the twist. Breweries don't negotiate with him. They compete for survival. Martin buys millions of pints every single week. So much volume that smaller breweries will literally restructure their entire production line just to get on his menu. If you're not pouring in a spoons, you don't exist in half the UK. And here's what'll make your head spin. Other pub landlords beg breweries for better prices. Breweries beg Martin for shelf space. He reversed the entire power dynamic. That cheap pint isn't charity. It's 40 years of brutal commercial efficiency. Ever wondered how Spoons serves a full English at 7 AM, curry at 5 PM, and a Sunday roast at 8 PM? All from the same kitchen. Here's where things get weird. Wetherspoon doesn't have kitchens, they have factories that happen to make dinner. Computer-controlled combination ovens cooking 12 dishes simultaneously, each at precisely the right temperature. Blast chillers that take food from cooking temp to safe storage in 90 minutes. Every single process is timed to the second and documented in manuals thicker than phone books. Staff aren't chefs, they're technicians following a system so precise that a tikka masala in Truro tastes identical to one in Thurso. It's McDonald's efficiency applied to proper meals. Wetherspoon isn't a restaurant, it's a logistics empire disguised as a pub. This move should have bankrupted him. In 2016, Tim Martin printed 200,000 beer mats promoting Brexit. He plastered his pubs with pro-leave propaganda, turned every table into a campaign billboard, and used his empire as a megaphone for leaving the EU. Remain supporters organised boycotts. Staff complained publicly. Investors panicked and sold shares. The London press called him every name under the sun. Business analysts predicted disaster. But here's the kicker. The business kept growing. Sales went up. Martin bet his entire empire, every pub, every employee, every customer, on what he believed was right. Most CEOs won't take a stand on office biscuits. Martin risked a £2 billion fortune on a constitutional referendum. It cost him customers in Remain areas, but it earned him fierce loyalty from others who felt like someone with actual power finally spoke for them. Love him or loathe him, and Britain is firmly split. You can't deny it took brass neck. That's the kind of conviction that built an empire from one derelict bookshop. Look up. That ceiling might be worth more than the entire pub. You think you're in a normal pub? Wrong. That Wetherspoon in Tunbridge Wells, it's a former opera house where Victorian ladies and gentlemen watched Gilbert and Sullivan, the one in Llandudno. It once hosted Edward VII, the pub in Rotherham, former Lloyd's Bank with soaring marble columns that cost more than most houses. Martin has spent over £100 million buying buildings everyone else thought were too expensive or too complicated. Former banks, old cinemas, Victorian gin palaces that hadn't served a drink in 50 years. While his competitors were building identikit pubs on retail parks, Martin was quietly accumulating some of the finest architecture in Britain. And because he bought them in the 80s and 90s when nobody wanted them, when they were considered white elephants, he paid a fraction of what they're worth today. You're not just drinking cheap beer, you're drinking it inside a Grade 2 listed monument that would cost £5 million to buy today. Heritage preservation disguised as commerce. Everyone jokes about Wetherspoon carpets. They're loud, they're garish. They look like someone spilled a paint factory on a Persian rug and then drove over it. But here's what Martin won't admit publicly. Wetherspoon carpets aren't ugly. They're engineered viral marketing. First, the practical bit, they absorb sound. Try having a conversation in a modern pub with hard floors and bare walls. You'll be shouting yourself hoarse within 20 minutes. Wetherspoon carpets drop the noise level by about 30%. But the real genius, people photograph them. They share them on Instagram and Twitter. They become talking points. You'll never guess what the carpet looks like in the spoons in Doncaster. Every single one of those social media posts is free advertising reaching thousands of people. Martin spent a fortune installing carpets that most business consultants called a waste of money. And they became one of the most recognisable brand elements in British retail. Those carpets cost more than the beer pumps, but they're worth every penny. This is the part every competitor hates. Remember the last time you paid £7 for a pint at an airport? Martin remembers too. And he thought it was daylight robbery, so he started opening Wetherspoon pubs in airports, charging normal prices, while everyone else gouged travellers. The airport hospitality industry thought he'd lost his mind. Airport customers are captive audiences who will pay premium prices because they've got no choice. Why charge £3.50 when you can charge double? Martin's answer was simple. Because it's the right thing to do, and because it's brilliant business. The first airport Wetherspoon at Stansted became the busiest pub in the entire airport within weeks. Travellers who'd resigned themselves to being fleeced were queuing up to pay normal prices. Now Wetherspoon is in every major UK airport. Those pubs are some of the most profitable in the entire chain. They combine Wetherspoon prices with airport volume, which means they're packed from 4 a.m. to midnight. But the real genius is the goodwill it generates. Every business traveller who's been gouged at airport bars for years becomes a Wetherspoon loyalist for life. This single idea made him millions without anyone noticing. Here's what most people miss. Wetherspoon isn't really a pub chain. It's a property portfolio with beer taps attached. Martin buys distressed real estate, abandoned post offices, forgotten cinemas, closed down banks, derelict theatres, and converts them into pubs. The pub operations might break even or make modest profit. But the building, that's where the real money is. When property values rise, and they always rise in town centres over the long term, Wetherspoon's worth skyrockets, even if beer sales flatline. Martin basically created a real estate investment trust that pays for itself through beer sales. The genius is that nobody noticed. Everyone thinks he's in the pub business. He's actually in the property business that happens to serve pints. When you're drinking that cheap beer, you're funding one of the most successful property acquisition strategies in modern British business. It's genius hidden in plain sight. If these secrets are blowing your mind, smash that like button right now, subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and drop a comment with your local spoons. Let's see which one gets the most love. Now, back to the empire. In 1991, Martin did something every pub owner thought was commercial suicide. He started serving breakfast from 7 a.m. Not just a quick bacon sarnie, full English breakfasts with unlimited tea and coffee refills. The pub industry was horrified. Pubs were for drinking, everyone knew that. Opening at 7 a.m. meant you were catering to alcoholics and night shift workers. It would destroy your reputation. But Martin spotted something nobody else could see. Millions of Britons wanted a proper breakfast in comfortable surroundings at prices that didn't feel like highway robbery. The big chains were charging £8 or £9 for a full English. Wetherspoon did it for £3.99 with unlimited hot drinks. Within a year, breakfast became one of their most profitable services. Those builders coming off night shifts, those pensioners up since 5 a.m, wanting somewhere warm and comfortable, those office workers who couldn't face another overpriced coffee shop. They all found a home at Wetherspoon. And it meant the pubs were generating revenue from 7 a.m. to midnight. While the competition didn't open until lunchtime, it was a masterstroke hidden behind sausages and beans. That Wetherspoon app on your phone, it's not just convenient, it's a data-gathering operation that would make Amazon jealous. Every time you order a pint or a curry through that app, you're telling Martin exactly what you like, when you like it, how much you're willing to pay, which pub you visit, what time you arrive, who you're with. Multiply that by millions of orders every week, and Wetherspoon has a real-time picture of British drinking and eating habits that market research companies would pay millions for. Martin can see which menu items are popular, which drinks are selling, which pubs are busy. all updating live right now this second. But here's the clever bit. People spend more through the app. When you're ordering from your seat instead of queuing at the bar, you're more likely to get another round. You're more likely to add that dessert or extra side. Average transactions go up 15 to 20% for app orders. What looks like customer convenience is actually a profit-boosting, data-gathering machine that also happened to future-proof the business. When COVID made bar queues impossible, Martin had accidentally built the infrastructure that saved him. Remember Sharon, who's been serving at your local Spoons for 15 years? She doesn't just work there, she owns part of it. Martin gives shares to staff, not just managers, everyone. If you pull pints at Wetherspoon, you own a piece of the company. When the business does well, you do well. It sounds simple, but in the brutal world of British hospitality, where staff are usually treated as disposable, it's revolutionary. The result? Wetherspoon has lower staff turnover than almost any competitor in the industry. People who started clearing tables at 18 are still there at 40, running multi-million-pound operations. They know the regulars by name. They know what's happening in the local community. They care about the business because it's literally their business too. Martin accidentally created something rare in modern Britain. Loyalty that goes both ways. And it makes Wetherspoon stronger than any of the corporate chains with their efficiency experts and management consultants. Every Tuesday, something magical happens across Britain. Steak Club. A proper steak with all the trimmings and a drink for under £10. On paper, the economics seem impossible. How can you serve a decent bit of beef that cheaply and still make money? Answer: loss leaders and volume. Martin knows that Tuesday is traditionally the deadest night of the week for pubs. Steak Club brings people in, who then bring their mates, who order other things, who stay for extra rounds. And those customers remember the value and come back on Friday and Saturday when margins are much higher. But there's something deeper happening here. Steak Club has become a ritual for millions of Britons. It's in diaries. It's part of weekly routines. Pensioner groups plan their week around it. Work colleagues make it their regular meet-up. That kind of habitual customer behaviour is worth its weight in gold. You can't buy that loyalty with advertising. Martin loses money on every Steak Club meal, but he makes it back 10 times over through everything else those loyal customers buy throughout the year. Pick up a copy of Wetherspoon News next time you're in and prepare to have your mind blown. Martin prints his own salary in it. Every director's salary. The profit margin on every single item you can buy. How much VAT you're paying on your pint. Letters from customers complaining about cold food or dirty toilets. No other major company in Britain does this. Can you imagine Tesco printing letters from customers who found a mouse in the bread aisle? Can you imagine McDonald's publishing their profit margins? Martin uses that magazine to campaign for tax fairness, to argue about Brexit, to explain exactly how much the government is taking from every pint you buy. The establishment thinks he's completely mad. You don't criticise government policy in your own company magazine. You don't tell customers your profit margins. You don't air your dirty laundry in public. But Martin understands something about British people that the corporate types never grasp. We respect honesty, even when we disagree with it. That magazine has built a bond of trust between Wetherspoon and its customers that no amount of advertising could ever buy. You might think Martin's politics are balmy, but you know he's not trying to con you. Behind those cheap prices and good food is a supply chain operation so sophisticated it would make most supermarkets weep with envy. Wetherspoon works with over 1,000 suppliers, and some of them have been with Martin for over 30 years. He figured out early that if you treat suppliers fairly and pay on time, revolutionary concept in hospitality, they'll give you better prices and better service. Wetherspoon's buying power is enormous. They're one of the biggest purchasers of British beef, chicken and fish in the entire country. That volume means suppliers will do things for Wetherspoon they won't do for anyone else. Custom portion sizes, special packaging, delivery schedules that match exactly when each pub needs stock. Martin invested millions in a centralised distribution system where every delivery is tracked, every temperature monitored, every item traceable from farm to plate. It's supply chain as competitive advantage. And it's why Wetherspoon can charge £7 for a meal that costs competitors £12 just to produce. Martin built a restaurant business that operates with the efficiency of a car factory, and nobody in the pub industry has managed to copy it. For over 20 years, Martin has been banging on about one thing in Wetherspoon news. The tax system is rigged against pubs. Supermarkets pay almost no VAT on food and alcohol. Pubs pay 20%. It means Tesco can sell a pint for less than it costs a pub to buy the wholesale beer. The system is fundamentally broken. Martin has published the numbers repeatedly, showing customers exactly how much of their £5 pint is going straight to the Treasury. He's printed league tables of MPs based on whether they support pub tax reform. He's made himself deeply unpopular with the government and with supermarket chains. But here's the thing, he's been fighting for the entire pub industry, including his competitors. Other pub chains benefit from Martin's lobbying without spending a penny themselves. And while he hasn't won the full VAT reform he wants, he has won concessions. Business rates relief, small adjustments to alcohol duty, changes that have kept thousands of pubs alive. Martin could have just accepted the unfair rules and maximised his own profit. Instead, he's been tilting at windmills for 2 decades. And slowly, bit by bit, he's actually moving them. That's the kind of stubborn determination that built an empire. Next time you're waiting for your food, have a proper look at the walls. Every Wetherspoon pub is covered with local history. Old photographs, stories about what the building used to be, information about local figures the pub is named after. It sounds like a small thing, but it's actually profound. In an age when every high street looks identical, when you could be in Barnsley or Basildon and not know the difference, Wetherspoon pubs are defiantly local. Martin understood that British people are proud of where they're from, even if we complain about it constantly. Those history displays give us something to talk about, something to show visitors. They make each pub feel unique, even though the menu and prices are identical nationwide. It's brand consistency with local soul. And here's a secret, those displays are educational. Thousands of young people have learned about their local area from reading Wetherspoon walls while waiting for their scampi. It's history teaching that doesn't feel like teaching, which makes it the most effective kind. Martin turned his pubs into informal museums and made them feel like they belonged in each community. Free tea and coffee refills might seem like a small thing, but it transformed who uses Wetherspoon and when. Suddenly the pubs became places where pensioners could meet for a morning chat that lasted 2 hours, where students could nurse a coffee and study for an entire afternoon, where new mums could get out of the house with a baby and not feel rushed to leave. Martin worked out something that most retail businesses forget. Sometimes the best customers aren't the ones spending the most money right now. Those pensioners with their refillable teas became loyal customers who came back for lunch and brought their families on weekends. Those skint students became graduates with proper jobs who remembered where they'd been welcomed when they had nothing. The free refills cost money in the short term, but they built customer loyalty worth millions, and they created atmosphere. A busy pub feels welcoming, an empty pub feels depressing. By giving people a reason to stay longer, Martin ensured his pubs always felt alive and vibrant. It was hospitality in the truest sense, making people genuinely welcome, not rushing them out the door to make room for the next punter. This is where Martin showed his true colours. When COVID hit in March 2020, Wetherspoon had to close all 875 pubs overnight. 40,000 staff suddenly had no work, no customers, no income. Most pub chains used the pandemic as an excuse to restructure/costs, close unprofitable sites permanently. The perfect opportunity to emerge leaner and meaner. Martin did something completely different. He promised every single Wetherspoon employee would have their job back when pubs reopened. Not some of them. Not the profitable locations. All 40,000 people. The financial press thought he'd gone soft in the head. This was the perfect opportunity to cut dead weight, to close marginal pubs, to emerge with better profit margins. But Martin kept his word. When pubs reopened, all 40,000 jobs were still there, waiting. It cost tens of millions in retained costs during lockdown, money that could have gone to shareholders or been banked as profit. Martin's reasoning was brutally simple. These people built my business over decades. I'm not throwing them away because of a virus. The loyalty that decision generated was extraordinary. Staff who might have left hospitality forever stayed. And when pubs reopened, Wetherspoon bounced back faster than any competitor because they had their experienced teams intact. It proved that sometimes doing the decent thing is also the smart thing. Every restaurant consultant in Britain will tell you the same thing. Narrow your menu, pick a cuisine, stick to it. Martin ignored them completely and created a menu with over 100 items. Curry, burgers, fish and chips, pasta, Mexican, steaks, full English breakfast, Sunday roasts, wraps, salads, everything. The experts said it would be a disaster. No kitchen could produce that many different dishes to consistent quality. It's operational madness. But Martin proved them spectacularly wrong by investing in equipment and training that most pubs would never dream of. Industrial-grade kit, computer-controlled cooking times, processes documented to the second, and proper staff training that puts most chain restaurants to shame. The result is something that shouldn't exist. Restaurant-quality food at prices that seem physically impossible. A meal that costs £15 to £20 at a chain restaurant costs £7 to £9 at Wetherspoon, and it's often better. Martin figured out that with volume, and they serve over 50 million meals a year, you can achieve economies of scale. Other pub chains can't touch. He applied manufacturing principles to food service. That massive menu isn't chaos, it's calculated genius. Wetherspoon has become one of Britain's most important building preservationists, though Martin would never describe himself that way. While councils and developers were knocking down Victorian and Edwardian buildings to put up glass boxes and cheap flats, Martin was buying them and bringing them back to life. The Grade 2 listed former post office in Tunbridge Wells, the Art Deco cinema in Bexley Heath, the former Lloyd's Bank in Rotherham with its soaring marble interior and original chandeliers. Buildings that would have been demolished or left to rot were given new purpose. Thousands of us now drink our pints in buildings that would otherwise have been lost forever, often without even realising we're sitting in what amounts to a living museum. Martin saved British architectural heritage while making a fortune. While online shopping was killing high streets across Britain, Wetherspoon was keeping them alive. In dozens of towns, the local spoons became the anchor that kept people coming into the town centre. When Debenhams closed, when Marks and Spencer pulled out, when Woolworths went bust, when every other major retailer abandoned the high street, the Wetherspoon stayed. It provided jobs when other retailers were slashing them. It brought footfall when everyone else was shopping on their phones. Martin never advertises this community role. He's not sentimental about it. But the effect is real and measurable. Town councils began to recognise that having a Wetherspoon was valuable beyond just the business rates. It became a gathering place and a social hub, particularly for older residents who might otherwise be isolated. Martin proved that making money and serving your community aren't opposites. They can be exactly the same thing. That's how you build a multi-billion-pound empire hiding in plain sight. From secret supply chains to building preservation, genius in every pint and every carpet. Hit subscribe and watch the next video to discover another British business story that will blow your mind. Now go get a pint. You've earned it.